At this time, I'll call our special meeting to order, and I would like to ask Commissioner Mitchell if he will lead us in our invocation and be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. If you will, all please rise.
Let us bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful and thankful for this day. We thank you, O God, and we ask you to bless our leaders of the nation, the leaders of the world, Heavenly Father, to help them come to a peaceful solution with the situation with Ukraine. We ask Heavenly Father to grant this governing body, let us make sound decisions, grant us the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to make decisions that's beneficial to all, to our town staff, to the employees, and the citizens. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Okay. At this time, is there any additions or deletions to our agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve our agenda?
I make a motion.
I have a motion to approve. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. At this time, I guess to clarify the reason for this meeting is in order for us to do some pre-planning for the budget. I was asked by Commissioner Mitchell especially because of the concerns that they had not been through a budget process before, and just to give them some ideas of what needed to be done. The first thing that we have on our list, and I hope you have your capital improvement plans with you, and what I have is probably left mine in the car.
That makes
because
you
I
same
do
as
not
mine.
have it.
I share mine with you there, Commissioner Legg.
Okay.
Too easy?
Is this being broadcast?
I've had too many meetings
No.
today.
No.
That's-
We don't have that on slides?
No, we don't have any
We need
slides.
to make some slides on this.
No, we're not broadcasting. All right, the first thing is just a little bit of an information for all of you so you'll know. Everything in our capital improvement plan, if you look at, you can compare, if you don't have 2020, but 2020 to 21, you can compare and see what we carried over and what we had that was funded. Where we are now is looking at 2021, and a lot of people have asked, and we've had questions as far as why aren't we going ahead and proceeding with the money that we received from the state. And the explanation, the best explanation I think we can give, is that we have to put that money in the budget, and then we have to budget it for the projects that we have before us. And of course, it is designated money. It can't be spent for anything else. I know there's been some questions about, well, could we spend it for something that's in the capital improvement? The money that we got from the state, whether it's titled Parks and Rec, Stormwater, it has to go to those projects. And those projects we were able to select from our capital improvement plan. So now looking at the capital improvement plan, what I'd like to do, and I'm gonna have one. I rushed to get out of the car and left it in the car. Let me
share
borrow
with you
his.
as we go, yes.
All righty, we'll share as we go. First thing that I wanted to let you take a look at is if you look at the very first thing that we have for our capital improvement plan, you'll notice that the projects in the CIP that they list, you notice that what happens is we've got things listed here with money that we plan to spend, but this is all projected money. So if you look at the ones that are projected, and we look at what we have projected for what we want to do in the future for capital improvements, that's what we want to talk about tonight, is looking at those projects that we're going to be pulling off of this, and then start talking about, and maybe even just among ourselves, thinking in terms of, is there any kind of updates we can give you on possibly where we are on these? I know the question has been, do we have a timeline? I've had several of you ask that. Do we have, in other words, we have a project on here, do we have a timeline that matches it? Because that was the concern, is if it's a 10-year project, where are we as far as those 10 years, especially those that would have started being on that plan back in let's just use the golf course. It supposedly was a 10-year plan, and we've had that plan now for a couple of years. Have we done anything so that we don't have 10 years from when we pick it back up? So that's kind of things we want to talk about. So looking at the plan, And I know the questions, and I think Commissioner Mitchell has already asterisked some of his, as far as the money that we project, future projected costs. If you look at it, let's just start at the general government, and you notice that the first project up there is the museum project, and the amount of money that they projected for future cost, as that money is what we would consider unfunded, even though it might not cost that much, or it could potentially cost more than that. The downtown development for Trade Street, there's put in the budget $200,000. We might have to ask to give us an update on that before we move on, because that again is something that the money's put there for future projects. And then the Thomas Campbell Oatman Memorial Chapel, that amount of money for future projected cost, I guess the question is, what is that cost for? So that's the kind of questions that we've had asked. So just looking at those first three items, what kind of questions do you have?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
my reasoning for requesting that we get together was mainly so that we as newly elected officials, Commissioner Scroll and I, can get to get caught up to speed with you all that has been in position already, to bring us up to date so that when we begin to move forward on projects, we all on the same sheet of music and have a clear understanding of what has been accomplished, what is yet to be accomplished, and has there been, as we know, there has been an increase in materials and labor. So that in return will almost make this plan somewhat obsolete. If you really think about it, look at it from this perspective of way the cost of goods and everything is going up. And the backlog of materials coming in now, which really has hampered a lot of projects. That's my main concern, because as a newly, when I took over projects when I was over in Iraq, first thing I did was meet with my body and say, hey, listen, where we at now with the projects I was working on last year? Bring me up to date to see where we're at and see what we got to do to get caught up and what we need to do to stay on task and stay on target. And that's the main reason that I like, for us to get together, so that when we meet next month, next month, it might as well say March,
Yeah, in
that
March.
we are tracking and we're ready to do business the right way.
Okay. Well, and that's where I think the reason we have a capital improvement plan is to give us target projects so that we have something to look at. And also if you'll notice, and I guess if you look closely at this plan, you'll see that it runs through 2025 as far as how much money they're requesting in the budget year. And then, of course, you'll find out whether or not we actually acquired money in this past budget. So we're actually working in the 2021-2022 budget. And that, again, right now, that budget runs through the end of June 30th.
Right.
And that's the other thing, is we're spending money that right now that hasn't been spent for this year's budget. What we're looking at is the budget, when we prepare this coming budget, it'll be the budget for 22-23, the rest of 22, and then, in other words, our year runs from July 1 to June 30th. So that's the reason that the capital improvement plan, what is really good about having this, is these are things that we know we need, and the decisions have to be made as far as how quickly these move along. And of course, now we know that we do have some funding for some of these. Any questions that you guys have that we might, either if I can't answer, maybe one of the others can, or potentially we have, of course, Drew's here, which he could help too. Does anybody have any questions about anything in particular?
Well, Madam Mayor, I have a question. So like looking at just for instance, the downtown development Trade Street, and it's asking, it has stuff for, it says sidewalk improvements, planters, street signs, street lights, benches, and other new amenities. Okay, and they're projecting $200,000 for that. Now, is that, like, that's not counting potential grants we can receive, or?
That does not include any kind of grant that we could receive, and that's where the potential for, especially looking at the sidewalks improvement, there is potential for us to continue the grant that we have, not continue it, get another grant that would be for those, to improve pedestrian travel. So Trade Street could be part of that, but I think we're also looking at what could we do so that we could promote Trade Street too, to get some of the businesses that are there to not only
Fix their
fix
business.
it, but also look at what could we do to revitalize those that are just sitting there.
Right.
And there's some, and of course it's up for sale. You know, one side of Trade Street is for sale, so that still is I don't know how much you'll see as far as other than just general people working in those particular businesses that will upgrade. But there was a thought about, you know, as far as sidewalks, street lights. I know that Mr. McLaughlin and myself, we've attended Main Street programs to look at some ideas from other small towns. One example that we've looked at closely is Fuquay-Varina. We also looked at Newbern, and Aberdeen's got a project that their Main Street has been improved. So we've tried to look at other areas, but that's kind of where we are. But we have to have buy-in to the owners down there too.
Okay.
And it probably now will cost more than, I think that was kind of seed money too. It wasn't, we knew it was probably, could potentially be more expensive.
On the sidewalk projects, I was just looking at some of those. And at the last meeting, we talked about some of the sidewalk projects, and Commissioner Marley brought up a point that we have been working on some of these projects for a long time. So I want to know where we at, tracking, moving forward. Where we at now? Where are we going? How are we going to get there on these projects that we have on the table now that is still outstanding?
Okay, so that would be one thing that we know would be a priority for the budget retreat. See, that's what the important thing about this meeting is you're actually gonna
Right.
get ideas so that from now until time of that retreat, we will have an opportunity to request the staff to get that for us. So we wanna know an update on the current projects.
Right. And see, have we hit any roadblocks?
Okay.
What is hindering us from accomplishing some of these projects, and what impact does art funds have on that? Because I've been watching, tracking art funds, and we know art funds is like a slider rule now. It's constantly moving and changing. I think as last week, I think they changed the rules again. And see, are we engaging in the conversation of the art funds, always up to date on that?
Okay. Any other thoughts that y'all have or questions?
I have a question or
Okay.
thought. How, and I guess this would be brought up at the retreat, is how are things broken down between something that is a want and something as a need?
Right, that's a
Like,
good question.
we need improved roads, but we would like on the Trade Street thing, planters, you know, stuff like that. Is there a way other than, I think we need it, or we want it kind of thing? Is there a thing?
That's where the prioritization comes, and what will happen will be, we'll be presented with a budget that will have the needs, and will also be included some of the things that have been asked for wants.
Okay.
And that's where we kind of get to look and ask questions about it. And then that, again, when it's a big project like these capital improvement plans, they're put in a planning type of location so that we can pick off of this list. It's like a menu too. It's just, do we have the money to pay for them? And that's the catch, is oftentimes that's the reason why we've got it in a capital improvement plan, is to wait until we can come up with the money. But I think what the questions I've been hearing are, what's the plan going forward? In other words, what are we doing this year as far as breaking these projects down? Especially the big projects, like I think I've heard the golf course, and I think I've heard the lake project, Heritage Park. Those are the projects that, I think updates maybe. I know Mayor Pro Tem has been concerned as far as some of the projects that we have funds for, that they're sitting there. So that's, again,
That's a good question.
yeah. So I guess that would just be an update on, would that be something that Mayor Pro Tem?
You know, it might be good, like if you haven't been through one of these processes, so obviously Drew can explain that in like a 30-minute kind of, but you know, like I'm looking at page, that's 18. Page 16 has our debt obligation. So this year in our budget, we start out with, we have $820,000 goes to debt obligation.
Okay.
So that's paying for like the dam, the 2 fire trucks, some of the vehicles. And so like starting out, we have our operating budget with personnel,
It's priority.
right? And we've got this $820,000 of debt. So we start out, when we prepare the budget, we start out with our known, here's what we're already obligated
Right.
to, here's our current staffing costs, any, you know, healthcare changes. And so we present you, like, here's the request, and then the department heads meet with us, and they do their formal requests, like, hey, we need staffing or equipment. And obviously, the CIP is only a 5-year snapshot. So like, you know, you hear talk of strategic plan, which is more like 10 or 20-year vision. But for us, we're really, in the CIP, it actually has it broken out, funding through those years. So the
Right.
sidewalks, you know, a lot of these projects, and Chancellor and Don and staff has really been working on those. Some of those projects are DOT engineering,
Right.
and we're only paying, as you know, some of them 20%.
Yeah.
Some of those projects might take 3, 4, 5 years to get designed and engineered. And we're hoping with coordination, we don't have like, oh, all 3 of these projects are happening in the same year when they expect our cash. So there, and, you know, we talk about Johnson Street, you know, DOT shut down for a year, they didn't do any funding, so they didn't even touch their projects for a year. It's just, I think, you know, to understand the basic overall process, you know, with the budgeting, we can definitely get into explaining that and detailing that, but then when we do it, it's really coming from the departmental level.
Yes.
What are our essential needs? And then you get into CIP and long-range projects. You know, I obviously wasn't here, but, you know, we talked about bonding. So in these discussions, we'll present you what our bonding capacity is, what it would take to do a bond election in 2022 or to do debt, what our capacities are on funding, what that looks like with how much money we have. It might be good to have an update, like Public Works, just on the streets and stormwater. What do you say, Don, we have like a $38 million street inventory. Just So, you know, like if you look at the current CIP, it has 1.2 million in street paving. That's just to kind of keep us where we are today. Obviously, that's not sustainable, but that's, you know, Don comes and he says, if you're not doing any work towards that, it continues to digress and get more expensive. So you kind of have to look at the big picture, and then when you start getting into these CIP projects, it gets specific to previous councils and individuals that had priorities. Obviously, those individuals may or may not serve anymore, it may change. It's hard to get the vibe of the community. Like what it's, you know, as a legislator, your job is to really set the budget, and then our staff implements it.
Very familiar.
Part of that key is not setting the budget and then having, you know, it did, like we had the rain garden and we had the kiosk, we had other projects that we may not have paid for, but those things get dumped onto our staff that didn't project or plan that. And so when you start looking at the long term and just trying to capture how come this project hasn't progressed, right? And some of those projects, like this year, a good one is the splash pad. If you look at the actual on page 23. So this year, you know, council approved in this year's budget for the splash pad, there's $0. So when you say, what are you doing on splash pad this year? Well, we are working with our contract from last year that was $40,000, trying to get the design, and fortunately, we were able to secure some state funds. So that will shift that and move that forward, but that single project alone, we'll have to come to you and explain that, you know, the water and sewer infrastructure there is insufficient. We might have to use some ARP money, which is allowable for that, and we need to upgrade. You can't just do the splash pad without the infrastructure. So there's a couple of steps there, and when people see we get the splash pad, it might take, you know, a season or 2 or 3 to get that to where people are in the water. And that takes coordination and timing. Obviously, they've been working on this for several years, but it's hard because there are so many moving pieces with all these different things to keep everybody appraised. But I think, you know, for me, and tying back to our staff, you know, we go from this year's budget, and if you look at last year's CIP, it was a lot of purchases of vehicles. They did several softwares. So what I try to do is I try to meet with the department heads and help hold them accountable to what's obligated this year without trying to put too much burden on them for the future. Because we really can't work on some of those things until we have funds or time. So you're always planning and moving ahead, but you're also doing what's allocated for this year. A lot of moving parts, but I'd like to, the department heads are here to have specific questions on these. I don't want to sidetrack you from the general discussion, but generally we send out a schedule which Drew puts together. And that initial work session with the council, that first retreat is really, it's good if we have your answers or questions and issues and projects and things you really want to talk about to kind of have that prepared so we don't just show up and do this and spend the whole afternoon.
All right, let me help you along. Everything you said is spot on. Trust me, I have a comprehensive understanding of budgets, maybe not at the municipality level, but the key is to have an understanding of where we're at now based on what this Board of Commissioners worked on last year to where we're at now, so we're not backtracking, trying to have an understanding of something that they already got done and they have an expectation. There's something I'm sure that they have a question about or they have not seen come to pass. And I want to get an understanding of those things so that we can work together as a team, because there's 5 of us up here that votes. And if we don't vote collectively together on these things, we'll be spinning our wheels next year this time talking about the same stuff. And I don't want to do that. I want us to move forward, have a clear-cut vision so we can roll on. And I think that, and that's what we're trying to get to. That's one of the reasons why we have some of these questions, so we have an understanding. For me to have questions to the department heads at this present time wouldn't make any sense, because they are the driving force behind the budget. They are the ones that knows what they need. But I will say this to them, and I say to anybody else that ever worked with me and worked for me. When I put together the budget, I had the requirements. Give me 3 of each. 3 that you need, 3 that you can lose. And at the same time, have 3 in your hip pocket, just in case fund is available or you're ready to execute. And that was an effective budget for me, but just because it was effective for me doesn't mean it's be effective for everyone else. I just want to have an understanding of where we at, so I know where we're going, so I know how we're going to get there. It's just that simple for me.
And, just by having a CIP, the mayor reached out and some of our department heads got together, and when they asked for legislative ideas, because they had extra funding,
Yes.
fortunately, we're able to provide that narrative, and, through the legislative process, they knocked off several of those that were on our list that
Good deal.
we really didn't have budgeted yet. But as an elected official, obviously it changes out constantly and turns over, and you do your term. And as a staff member, obviously I'm new, but, several of the staff, Chuck's been here for 34 years. You get topics and issues because the citizenry around us may not be our residents. You're new. Those people that have hit 10 different people through this council and turnover, a good example is they're like, hey, Beaver Circle. This council and people who have come and gone already have that answer, but it's new to you. And so we try to say, if you have citizens that have questions or concerns, push them to staff, because some of our staff, like, I can explain, hey, this is a private road and the county, it's not our town road, we can't do anything there, but it's hard for you to tell somebody that, and you might not know. But I think, those projects, Hope Mills is an eclectic animal. There's a lot of hodgepodge jurisdictional issues, access roads, combined with DOT and some of our partnerships, PWC. It's hard. A lot of our issues operationally, like for the chief, they've got 4-wheelers that can't pursue them because they go into the county. And those are probably the things you hear about more from the citizens than they are, the parks and the projects. You probably get more like, hey, I'm not happy because this person did this and my neighbor, and they come to you, and that's, we're here to kind of answer that and help you.
I think the other question that I heard from them too, I'm just trying to go back through the ones that I've been requested to answer, is, for instance, in the budget where we've spent money and it shows that the money was, like how much we would request for 2021, 2022. All right. clarify is that money when we get to the budget retreat, instead of us, an update on that project. In other words, have we spent that money? Has that money floated higher, or have we been able to cut costs? If we've done the designs, because what is brought to mind, and I'll just be the devil's advocate here, I guess is what I can tell you, is that we have projects that we project cost on, and then when the project gets here, oh, by the way, we need more money for water and sewer. All right, on the front end of that, why didn't we know that? In other words, and the people that are doing these project designs for us, all right, in their project design, are they just making us a pretty picture, or are they going through, and my understanding was the soil reports and all the things they're doing, that the McAdams, I'll use McAdams Group for an example, that when that project design is done, it should be to the point that we could get at least a rough estimate at that point in time. And what we're getting is, as the project progresses, then a can of worms opens up. Like for instance, with the sidewalk across the street. That sidewalk was getting ready to get started, and it had to stop because all of a sudden there's something under the ground that we didn't know was there. And that's where I think that's the questions they have is not only an update on the project, but is there a way from here forward? They're not wanting to add new projects. Right. I haven't heard a soul say they want to add new projects. What they want to do is to get some of these that can be done progressing towards completion. And then looking around the community, for instance, splash pads, we know that they're being built in Cumberland County, and the process there, what made theirs move sooner and quicker? I guess those are the kinds of questions that they're trying to get answers to.
So I mean, you turn back and you go, okay, Johnson Street's a good example. 8-10 years ago,
all right,
the commissioner said, let's get Johnson Street done, and they didn't think about railroad crossing, signalization.
No, they had
water,
to.
Sewer, line replacement.
All that had to be included in the proposal. When you
But
do
it wasn't.
that's what I'm saying is that's why, are we doing a better job on these projects that we haven't funded yet? Because if we're continuing, if the target's moving, then we'll never have enough money to complete them. I think that's the question right there.
So I think a lot of these projects we're looking at with sidewalks are DOT projects. They're not in-house. We're just paying a match. They're doing acquisition right away. They're doing design, and we pay a portion. A lot of those are not necessarily all in Hope Mills.
Right.
The council wanted continuity so that you can walk across county properties, not have disjointed piece of sidewalk. So we're paying the proportionate share to do that whole project. The sidewalks, I mean, the DOT people, it seems like they're, those are current projects that are slated. I would assume, Rockfish is a divided roadway with double lanes, full sidewalk. It's a pretty large endeavor. Most of that's not the sidewalk, and we're involved in the proportionate piece of the sidewalk.
Yeah. Well, that project caught up to us.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that project would, if the plans have been in place, that project, and if there's just so many circumstances that have occurred. So that one's, we know it's going to be completed, but it's going to be done because DOT is widening the road and they're acquiring property, and it's going to happen. But looking at, the other projects that we have that, for instance, you could use the Heritage Park. That's one that I think I've heard. And then I know that there's
the chapel.
The chapel, yeah.
The
and
museum.
then
So like if you start reeling off what the CIP has in it, the chapel was allocated money last year. First year. They accomplished those bids and those pieces to that point. And you get a group of citizens or people engaged in that project, and they're like, well, now we need to also do X, Y, Z. And there's all this additional. They did what the original scope was, and that project is still hovering on the list with additional needs, right? Instead of, what's the longer, working with McAdams, obviously, if you get into the budget, they're working on the bathrooms there. And so they have that scoped out, and, it's in our budget, and there was a lot of trimming last year to make the budget balanced. So some of those projects, this is a council approved document, and they have zero funds for some of those projects. So that means those projects kind of take a standstill.
Madam Mayor,
Uh-huh.
I also got a question.
Okay.
Now, is there some sort of like tracker or something
Gauge
that we
budget.
could look at? Because I mean, Commissioner Mitchell probably say the same thing, especially being ex-military. Show us how, this is the step we're at. This step had to be skipped because we don't have the funds. Because we're skipping this step, we're gonna do this step instead. Is there any kind
So
of tracker?
they have done that, like, for instance, Norco's working with Team Adams, and they have a timeline, they have, just like our construction project next door, but that's on each specific project.
Mm-hmm.
It should be.
Some of the projects are just kind of catch-alls on the list for like Don. And Don is the full-time public works director, and as he gets extra time, he gets to whittle away on, when I started, he had 40 projects.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 39th on the list, that's where a capacity issue comes in, like if we don't have somebody to manage projects, they get divvied out to our staff,
Yeah.
and as we get to them, if it's in the budget for this year, that's our prioritization.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Bruce and Dunn, matter of fact, they can relate to this. Every military installation has a master plan. And as maintenance people, there's a schedule. And there is priority taskings on every one of those that we was required to meet. And that BC tracked that probably weekly. And his command was briefed daily. And not saying at that level, but it makes things much more simple and easier that way to avoid us trying to see where we at, because we can look at that, hey, all right, so we on this date and time of this project. That project next door is a turnkey project. Ain't no doubt in my mind, from the day that y'all broke ground to the end state, that's a turnkey project. But I know you've had a couple of unknowns that pop up, and that's gonna happen with projects. That's why you put that residual income in there. But at the same time, you got some projects in here that is oatmeal on, that don't seem like nothing has been done with them. And I just wanna see those projects either get done, or just take them off so that y'all can move forward, so the town can get healthy. So this town is working y'all. Y'all not working this town right now, based on what I'm looking at, seriously. And the only way we're gonna get there is to get our taskers on track, get our goals where they need to be at, because you've seen some of yourself, Scott, you had to be reactive instead of being proactive.
So part of that is we don't have federal funding. As you folks change out, the list changes out.
I'm sure, I know it does.
And so we work on things and get it to 30% design, and then new council might be like, oh no, we're not gonna build this now.
But there's an app for that too.
And so part of the problem though is, we have limited means for our needs. Our
Right.
stormwater alone, we could spend, I don't know, $150, $200 million probably.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
The
fresh
street
with it.
issue, which you will start to hear about in 5 or 6 years, or this year, as they start to degrade with some of the roads and the standards. and
Already
stuff,
are.
That's an imminent need for the
Mhm.
community, and we need to start throwing money at it.
Yes.
But in offsetting that, we have some new debt obligation on the new facility.
Mm-hmm.
Our funding is coming in, it's based on the 2018 assessment, which was a reduction. So until, 2024, 25, we're kind of operating on 5-year-old pay. And so in addition to that, we do have needs and changes and prioritization. So the big picture, it's hard, it's not, I have some excellent retirees from the military that have done what you described.
Right.
But as an entity, it's very dynamic, and it is very year to year, but we try not to lose sight with the CIP and the strategic plan. But it's hard because some of those bigger picture things, just like you keep hearing about the ball fields and the big picture projects, even if we get bonding, the streets and that type of project, we only have capacity to maybe take $10, $12 million of bonds. That's it. And if you have $35 million worth of park and streets, you get some of it, but not all of it. And, that's where it's really difficult as a community to be like, what is our essential priority? It's hard because everybody's getting.
Well, I think the good news for this board and for this year is they don't want to change things. They don't want something other than what we have. So you're not looking at, we're going to redo and restart, and we're going to spend a lot of money trying to make changes. This board has agreed that what they want to do is to continue what's happening. So the next 2 years, they're looking at whatever is on the priority list, and whatever we can fund, that's what they want to do. I don't have a person up here that wants to change anything. So I think that's the good news. That's the first time I can say since I've been mayor that we've actually had a board that is focused on don't go backwards. We don't want to go backwards. We want to move forward. So what we've got is you've got the total support of what we're doing. But the thing is, I think they just want to know, what are we doing and how are we doing it? You know, I think that's the big question. It's not to nitpick and say don't do this and don't do that. There's a semi-timeline in here on where things will be funded. So I think what we're looking at is getting it done. So
before we do the actual retreat, the CIP gets updated, so the things that are already in there or done will be removed, and then we'll get updates for, here's where this project is, this is what we need, and it's good to ask these questions, we're just not at the discussion point on those things for this next budget.
Here's a question. As things are chipped off and done, how do you update us?
Yeah.
So every month you get a financial report in the packet that gives the percentage of our operating, our expenditures to date, our revenues to date.
No, I get that. I understand that. No.
He's talking project.
Talking about projects. How are the projects identified to us that we're at 75%, 25%? The end state is May 25, you know. How are we informed on that of that nature?
One of the things they did previously was the manager or the mayor would do a state of the town, say, hey, this is what we accomplished last year, and celebrate our successes. As projects are finished, when the dam was done, they do an opening ceremony, and they promote it, they get it out there and advertise it. But you get project updates from your staff constantly.
No, go ahead.
Well, and this is where oops, breaking stuff. This is where I was talking about as far as some kind of tracker.
Right.
You know, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel or make stuff difficult, but especially for like myself and Commissioner Mitchell, we're coming on, so I can pick anything. The Johnson Street sidewalk. When did it originally start? When did it originally pop into someone's head and say, I want to have something put on Johnson Street. I want a sidewalk. From, T-Day minus whenever to what point we're at now. So from inception to today's date kind of thing. Something that shows us that, it's in the back of our heads, but this is where we're at. So we've talked with, step-by-step kind of thing, showing us that it's not really staying stagnant, but it's out of our hands for the time being.
Right.
Something that's showing we are moving forward and not
So
just...
you just had an update though from Don at the last meeting.
No,
That's where he's like, here's the status, this is what we're projecting.
Right.
It might be at the point where the council looks at it and says, might not be cost effective to proceed.
You know what?
That's where we have to bring you that data.
All right, I guess.
But I've had different staff members, and there's drawers full of information on that one project. At what point do you need, as a legislator, you're not managing the project, you're overseeing the budget, you're making sure we're proceeding.
No, we understand. Trust me, we fully understand
So that
that.
sounds more like managing operations.
No, we're not. No, it does not. Let's take something. Matter of fact, we know for a fact that we get a refund on this building every month. We know for a fact that this building is 56% done, if I'm not mistaken, based on what I read, somewhere along that line. We're tracking, but you got dead projects in this book here. What's the status? It's just that simple. What's the status? CRP is good. That book is the same as it was when you presented it to this town last year. Where's the update saying it? How do we know where we're at with some of those projects? Do that make sense?
Sure, it sounds like you want an ongoing status report.
Wow. There we go.
Which though to me means the people that are already buried in all their day-to-day
No, no,
projects are now having to do
It's,
reporting and additional, I'm just saying, that's what it sounds like to me. I'm
no,
like,
maybe I'll give you an example of one that we used that will make it easy then, because it's really not that hard. If nothing has been done on it, guess what? There's nothing to report. Only projects that you're making progress on. If nothing to report, trust me, you don't do nothing with it. But I'm sure there's got to be some action going. It's in the planning phase. We are sent it out for bid, and we get those information on some projects. Ain't no doubt in our mind. But the thing is, if we, for some reason, miss a meeting or have to go back and video, hell, we don't know anything about that. You know, it's just that simple.
Is that something, a project status report, that you think would need to be on current projects, monthly, quarterly, how often?
I think, I,
Because like you said, if it's monthly, it could be, there's nothing to report.
Right.
Right.
But maybe if it's quarterly, then it's like there would be stuff to add, some changes.
well, even monthly, that way, so not only ourselves, but if citizens are watching the live, the feed and stuff, to be like, okay, so it was brought up, it is still,
Does it need to be discussed, or is it like the manager's report, it's
No.
just something that you get?
just.
Something we get, no
like a
discussion.
financial report.
Right. No discussion.
Got it.
Matter of fact, my goal is hopefully we work together to get this thing where we want to be. Our meeting should last no more than 45 minutes, an hour to max.
Right. Well, and I think like what we're getting now with the public safety building, each week, each time that he comes, he's giving us an update on where we are. Of course, that's a major big project.
Right.
We're doing that because originally it was gonna be quarterly, but the council said,
Yeah.
no, we wanna hear this month. So we do
That's
it
a major
monthly
project.
based on y'all's
Yeah.
request.
And so, so
That's the
whatever,
council
yeah,
direction.
whatever is brought to us, it can be nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, because I think that's the key, is that just knowing that whatever's happening, that it's up to
But I
date.
think- I think what's hard is, like say the chapel, the budget and what was allocated to do was 100%. So we're done and it's off the
But,
books.
but
then
the,
we get-
but the
we get, hey,
bathrooms,
we need this.
the questions are about the bathrooms. The money was funded for the bathrooms to be completed before Christmas. And so the bathrooms are sitting out there, with the, yeah,
what?
that's what I'm saying. But see, that's what this board would need, this board needs to know, they need to know that. We
You're
bid
right.
it, we didn't get any bids. We bid it, we didn't get any bids, because at least there's something there that lets them know that why it's, not happening.
Right.
We've got, right now, based on what I've got, we've got 14 active projects.
Okay,
That's good. And see, that's
that
good to
are
know.
either funded or fixing to be funded.
See,
The rest of the stuff in the CIP, it's listed, it's a priority at some point in the future, but if it's not funded, it's not a current project.
right.
So when you ask the question like, when was this project envisioned? When did it actually begin?
It's in the
Well,
CIP.
it might have began 5 years ago, but guess what? There's no funding, so it's listed in the CIP, something we want to do. Is it a need? Not yet, because we haven't made it the top priority, but it's in the CIP. Once there's funding, we'll do it. A lot of times grants and the stuff like we did with our representatives and those sorts of things, you're not gonna get a grant, you're not gonna get reps to look at it if it's not in your CIP.
right.
Yeah.
Understand. That's
So that's
understandable.
why what I need from the council to update the CIP is not only staff's input, but council's input. What's some things that's not in the CIP that should be in it? So if opportunities arise, we can find that fund. Now, you asked about how come it changes? How come the CIP says it's gonna be $300,000,
I
then
know
all
what
of a sudden we get a plan and stuff and it's half a million? What happened? Well, when we first envisioned this thing, that was 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it cost $300,000. Now, today, we actually got a plan, we got it designed, it's gonna be 500. We update the CIP once we know that. But sometimes you don't know, just like you said with, the street projects. They start digging, there's stuff underground, there's no way to know some of that stuff's there.
That's true.
Until you start digging. Some of the stuff you don't know until it's actually planned or designed. The splash pad, for instance, we're thinking it's gonna be $340,000. Getting the state money to finally do it. We've been talking about it for 3 years.
Yep.
So now we can actually make it a reality. But in the design, we found out the sewer that we have out there is not adequate. We're gonna have to update that sewer line. Guess what? We thought originally we could use that well that we dug over there. It's not adequate.
Right.
We're gonna have to put in a secondary water line. So these are things that when we originally planned to do this, we didn't know that. We thought,
Right.
yeah, there's a sewer line, there's water access, not a problem. Well, once it's designed, here's the flow that you need, here's what you have to have. So there are some things that come up that there's no way to know that ahead of time. It's just part of the process.
No, I fully understand that. You know, as a war planner, I had to calculate every variable. But you just answered the question for me. You said there's 14 projects that's pending, or that's already in the works. And that's exactly what we're talking about, because I didn't know there's 14 projects
I didn't
pending
either.
in the works. See, and that's the kind of update we need. We need to know that stuff so that I can call that effective communication, being informed. Now, I'll be honest with you, unless that project is 50%, 70% done, there's no need to brief us on that every day. Only when you have got, we will come up with a percentage or matrix of what we consider a sliding rule that we need info on. Because I can assure you that it will eliminate a lot of questions in the process in the future. It's gonna make your job a whole lot easier. 'Cause-
At the budget retreat, was it March 11th? Is that, we have
Yes.
to move it to the second Friday. I think it's March 11th at the budget retreat.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have like a, what you call it, a example of a project status report
Okay.
for you to look at and see, is this something that we can update monthly
All right,
or quarterly that would give y'all the information that you'd like to have?
excellent, I like that.
So part of it too is, you know, most of my staff is saying, the council approved a project manager previously. It wasn't the funding to get somebody hired, but most of my department heads, they're all really good at project managing, but that's not their full-time job. So it might be something we look at again to oversee doing the reporting, to keep all the projects on task. I mean, just Dawn alone, how many projects you have, Dawn? Like when you get to 20, 30 projects, and each one is major,
Right.
things get put off to the side because you got day to day. And
Try,
as an organization, I do need capacity. And
True. It's part of the budget. Look at your personnel manning.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you need to be effective? What do you need to be fully functional? I mean, right now, are you sustainable or are you just barely surviving? And those are the things that every department head should be submitting to us, letting us know where are they at. And we know I sat and listened last year when y'all was talking about, well, I need personnel in this department, I need this, I need that. The question is, it's like anything else, and you all have probably done budgets before. You have to go back and look at your whole entire budget. What is it that I need? What's required? What's desired? What can I live without? What do I need to live with? And that's just part of budgeting. And then as council, Drew need to come back and tell us and say, listen, unfortunately, we've been trying to keep the budget balanced, but we got to increase taxes. That's gonna have to come into play at some point, some time, in order to sustain this town, to get it to the quality and level what it needs to be at. I mean, it's a subject nobody like to talk about, but it's real world. This business. This town is a business. It's not just a municipality. It is a town that needs our input. It needs y'all input so that we can get y'all what y'all need to do your job. And that's all I want to be able to do when I'm sitting up here for 2 years. I'm up here giving y'all what y'all need to do your job. And in order for me to get there, I have to better understand the budget process, what's required, what's needed.
Madam Mayor, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
It's good to hear the two new members speaking up with ideas that some of us evidently didn't think about or it got biased. But we have a lot of things. I think if the Marco can report, I think we're losing one ball field across the street because the road's going to take it out. Is that correct? You didn't know you was going to have to get up and speak, did you?
You wanted to? Okay, no problem.
Actually, I did, but anyway. So we don't know what DOT is going to do yet. We just know that there's an easement going across the field. We may or may not have to move it. We just know that we had an easement. Anytime they want to dig in the street, they may have to dig into our
Yeah.
field. So that's what we're hoping. We're hoping we don't lose it, but there's a possibility we might. Don't think the way most easements have worked on trails and fields in the past in other municipalities. We just know the easement's there, and we probably can't put the fence up, but you know, Public Works or whoever need to have access to it, and if they need to dig into the easement to get access to the utility, then, you know, we gotta repair it at our own cost if they have to go back in and do it. So,
I know that sign out there in front of the
gone.
ballpark is on DOT property.
yep, that sign is a couple of signs on our side, so it's a few things that's existing now that's gonna, you know, we got to either relocate them or it's just gonna be gone completely.
I knew the sign was on DOT because I helped do the contract on that. But I didn't know some of the ball field may have to go. And then I don't know what we're gonna do unless we get busy on the golf course. And I can't see that happen soon,
Right.
but I wanna see it on the agenda for the retreat so that we can discuss it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Anyone else have a question for Lamarco?
We have maps at the back too, if you.
Okay.
Them maps I need to ride around. You gotta take me to the area. Let me put my hands on it.
I wanted to add something. We were talking about things that, you know, that are taking longer or whatever. One of the problems I noticed when I got here, and it's probably plagued me on all the projects I have, we don't have as-built documents. So
what?
as-built documents, plans that show you exactly where things are.
Okay.
So it's almost like as you go. So when you say, well, things creep up on us and we didn't know about it, if you don't pay for a survey up front to locate all these things,
Okay.
and you start digging to a park and you don't know that there's a sewer line here or lack thereof, or you don't know that there's a 4-inch sewer line in lieu of an 8-inch. Those things I couldn't have known, anybody could have known,
That's
because
right.
we don't have accurate as-built documents that we can go back in and look at and say, hey, this right here's a 4-inch. So now what we're dealing with now is we having to pay for a surveyor to come out and locate these things for us because we didn't know. I mean, and you're gonna find out on a lot of projects in Hope Mills because, you know, not to push blame on anybody else, but prior to us, nobody kept as-built documents. So, you know, an example, anything that changes over there, the new fire rescue building, there should be a set of as-built documents to
Right.
show what changed and what's below the ground,
I agree.
and then going forward. So
Right.
those are the things that we're dealing with now on Heritage Park and on Splash Pad. I mean,
Madam Mayor, what do we need to do to make that happen, Scott?
So all of our current stuff gets that done to it.
No. We are talking about a master as problem. What you call it again?
as-built.
Whatever it's called, yeah. But
So, like,
anyway.
you could do a survey, like our property here,
Mhm.
down all, in all the ball fields.
Mhm.
Yeah, we could do a survey and as-built on that. I don't, anybody would have a guess what that would be. It's,
Yes, sir.
It's expensive.
Well, what we do is actually now, for the last 4 years, as far as as-bills go, any commercial project that's completed, whether it be for the town or an outside, private entity, before I issue a CO on it, they have to give me 2 sets of as-bills. One in the digital form, like a thumb drive and a CD, and for town projects, I require a digital and a written paper. So I've got a special section in the plan review room where all our town projects go for our as-bills. And that's so when Bruce or Marco or anybody else, or you guys want to look at plan reviews for our projects that we've had in the last 4 years to date, you can come and look at them. Marco is correct. Some of our as-bills are from the 80s and the 90s, and
They
you
wanna
look
cut
at them
that.
and
My question,
it's like trying to put arithmetic together, so it's just,
I guess my question is, based on what you both have said, we're piecemealing this thing together. And no matter what you piecemeal, it's gonna cost you.
correct.
And it doesn't matter. Now, the question is, would it cost us more in the long term? Because, and also, you gotta factor one important out, time. Because anytime you piecemeal, it takes extra time, so that's another cost that's not factored in there. So what would it cost to get a master plan like that? I'm just saying, this is discussion only. so that we can avoid issues like this, discovery, because that's what is happening every time we build something, you know, hey, too small, too big, it's not adequate.
In my opinion, Commissioner, I've been in construction for 40 years.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, I think you take one project at a time.
Okay.
I think a master plan would not be very wise in the sense that it's expensive and we don't know what the future holds.
Okay.
We don't know what we might want to do, what we not want to do as a town. So if we take one project at a time. So I can guarantee you this, when this building over here is done, before I issue a CO on it, and I let the first person walk in there and occupy it, we will have as-bills on that project.
Mhm.
And they'll be in the planning room for the inspection department, anybody can look at it. We're gonna have as-bills on the bathrooms. I've already looked at the bathrooms, they presented plans to me, I've looked at them. And they haven't gone through an official plan review for inspection, but Lamarco's come to me. We try to be proactive and knock stuff out in front. Try
Okay.
to get ahead of it. So there's a lot of things that we do that you don't know, that we try to stay ahead of the game.
Okay.
And there's some folks that up jumps the boogeyman, and here we go. You know,
So-
so we're trying to stay ahead of the game in a lot of the things. But the projects, like so far as like cosmetic projects, there's no as-bills.
Right.
You know, it's cosmetics, no. But any type of construction, the museum, if they go in and start doing stuff in there, as-bills, splash pads, the Heritage Park's got a site plans, and if they do any construction out there, they're gonna have as-bills. So I can't help what happened before, but we can only do what we got with today.
So
And that's what we've been doing in the inspection department for the last 4 years is as-bills. And according to the North Carolina Department of Culture, the history guys, the SHPO guys, we only have to keep commercial plans for 1 year. So I purge public, but our plans will stay in our room as long as they stay. So
Right.
we don't purge those.
But you the expert, so if that's what you recommend, hey, I'm done.
Well, I'm just saying, as far as doing that, I mean, projects and what have you, it's easier because it's just you're focused on one separate thing, and it's kind of like if you go a larger sense of it, we just don't know because everything's different. What may work in one spot on a master plan may not work somewhere else. So that's
Okay.
why you want to do one at a time.
One other question, is anything that, I guess, foresight on the, construction end will help expedite and will help somewhat improve the process? Anything that, I guess, we can do to improve the process to make it little more or less troublesome?
It all comes down to money.
It's all about the money,
Yeah,
right?
it's all about the money.
Right.
It all comes down to the money and getting stuff done. I can tell you right now, I have noticed a change, like for residential construction, for single-family homes. Whereas 2-3 years ago, pre-COVID, a lot of builders in town were getting homes built. They could build one in 3 or 4 months. I mean, they would build them up, right?
Right.
So you can build one in 3 or 4 months. Now it's taking the builders in our town right now an average of 9 to 12 months to get a home built.
Wow.
And y'all know, I mean, I'm pretty sure know about the flood. It's a lot of
Right.
different ripple effects, the supply chain, labor, materials. I mean, it's all that stuff, and it's kind of hit us all in one shot. So you have certain projects that seem to be making leeway, and then all of a sudden they hit a spot. I'll give you an example. Highway 55, the hamburger place. Okay. Hopefully, if knock on wood, they'll be open. We're CO next week. I talked to them folks today. That restaurant sat idle for 4.5 months. They couldn't do nothing to it because they were waiting on cooking equipment.
I heard that. Wow.
And so that's what's happening in a lot of projects right now. As far as our project here next door, I feel fortunate that they've had some hiccups, but they're moving
Right.
along. You know, and we're doing it in a smart way where we only want to try to do this stuff once, not to go back and do it again. And so yes, sir. I mean, it's tough right now, but it all comes down to the money. Once you get the funding and the money, we have to get out there and get the RFPs out, request for proposals,
Right.
and there's no guarantee. Right now, contractors are fat, and what I mean by that is they're going to go with the largest money,
Right.
and they're going to go with the path of least resistance. So
Right.
if you're a contractor, are you going to take a municipality contract, a federal contract, or a private contract? You're going to go private every time. because there's more hoops to jump
Yeah.
in municipality and a federal. So that's what we're experiencing now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner.
That's really good.
Come on down.
Reference your question about the as-built, so I'm gonna give you an example of how that works and the lack of them. We completed the Big T's project last year, and there were no as-built drawings for the Big T's building. So we had to, before we could start the project per se, we had to hire an engineer to come in and reverse engineer and survey that building so they could come up with essentially an as-built drawing, which was best guess. Piggybacking on one of the reasons why Kenny says doing a whole comprehensive as-built for the town is probably not very feasible.
Okay.
One of the things that we had to do was, and I'm sure you're familiar with the term non-destructive inspection versus partial destructive. In order to figure out what we had in that building, we had to tear out walls
Wow.
and dig up concrete flooring and stuff like that because we had to find the infrastructure portions of that facility. So in order to have an accurate as-built, like you're talking about comprehensive for the town, we can do it partially, but there would be destructive areas of it as well in order to find it if you want it to be completely accurate, and that's probably not the most feasible way of doing
Okay.
things. What we did with the Big T's, knowing that we didn't have as-bills and hiring for the survey up front, it extended the project about an extra 6 or 7 weeks, give or take, and added a few $1,000s to the project. But when we were finished with it, Kenny got the drawings for the building, so now we know where everything is there.
That's good. Got one question for you.
Sir.
Let's take Heritage Park down there. Would that be required down in that area?
For as-built drawings?
Yes.
Yes.
Has it been requested yet, done?
Well, you can't do as-built drawing until a project's complete, because
All right.
as-built is
Oh,
exactly
it's
that.
out no. You don't have to do no pre then, it's, you have to do pre. Huh?
It's part of the engineers to go to as-built or basically the contract has a red line, everything
Mhm.
changes. And then the firm, the engineering firm, architecture firm, they'll AutoCAD that in digital format and then hand it over to the
So-
town as part of their contract.
So it's not pre
No,
required, it's post, okay.
roger that.
All right. Oh, now I have a clear understanding. That makes a whole lot of sense.
As-built, so our building's as-built.
Right.
As-built, so they give us.
Okay.
how to do it.
But they do require survey work to
Right.
know where stuff
To
is.
know for stuff that, that's why I was thinking that, that's why I was saying, well, I can do it in advance, you know what I mean? Yeah, that way, cause then you can identify what type of sewers you have when you dig down and avoid other issues and problems. Oh, makes a lot of sense now. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Good education.
Yes. Anyone have any other questions in reference to the CIP? And you'll get an updated one. That's why I asked, and if you'll start looking at the previous years, you can, or like if you look at the one that was 2021 and compare it to 2020, you'll be able to see if there's anything that's been moved or taken off or changed. And then, so that kind of give you a guide. But when we go to our budget retreat, before you ever get the final pretty copy like this, you'll go through the working process, and then we get the pretty copy. Is that correct?
I'll have your 22 CIP at the budget retreat,
Mm-hmm.
March 11th. And anything that needs to be added to that, we'll need to know about bid,
Madam Mayor,
Uh-huh.
working on that.
I think the only thing that we talked about this last year, so it's not completely brand new, so I don't want to say that we didn't say anything new, but I would still like to see the transportation plan put in there, and I think you already had Mr. Hout on the agenda on March, but that's the only thing new that I can think of. And then I know that we were talking about the lake park improvements. We were talking about some swings, and then I don't remember saying
that's-
anything else
yeah.
about them. It was like these little things that come up and then we don't hear anything about them. But those are like two things in particular that I thought about. And I also saw in the document that Drew sent, he added in the bonds information, and that is supposed to help take care of include streets and parks and recreations, which could include some improvements in the master plan at the golf course.
The
So-
bond information.
Yeah, so the bond information. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You added in the roads in there. That was streets and parks and recreation, correct?
Right.
Okay. So that's it. That's all that I had, Madam Mayor.
The other thing is that we're getting a lot of information now, and even County Commissioner Chair Glenn Adams mentioned that some of the infrastructure money that is coming from federal government is coming in the form of grants. And so he was asking me, what are we going to pursue? Because he's looking at the possibilities, especially with the flooding we had. There's a lot of money out there. So my thoughts are, and maybe this might help, is that if we could focus on where we could get more money, then that position that you're looking at, the project manager, we need to make it so that person could be multifaceted. You know, they could do some of this with the grants or with the proposals, because there's money available right now that for everything. I mean, I've received myself 2 or 3, and then Mr. Adams was mentioning a couple more that are out there that are monies that we could apply for that we probably would qualify for. So that's where I'm wondering, we need to think about that, because otherwise there's probably opportunities that we're going to miss. And this is free. I don't want to say free money, but this is money that we will acquire, and there's no matching to it. You know, there are some that are matching. We have to do 10 or 20%, but that's the thing. And the other thing I was going to mention, there's also some money about when we were at FAMPO, and I thought I'd give that to y'all as far as the types of monies that are available. And they mentioned railroad. There is some funding somewhere through the railroads now. And of course, we've got one coming right through the middle of town, so might be something that we could look at there too. And then the other thing with FAMPO is for transportation, there's potential now for to have a route in Hope Mills and from Hope Mills to the mall, and that would be funded not necessarily by Hope Mills, but by funding that we could acquire. And that's where Randy Hume, one of the things I'd asked was for Randy Hume to come and do a presentation, and then maybe invite Hank Graham too from FAMPO, because of the potential of funding it through other sources for a 2-year plan. It'd be a 2-year plan, and then see what happens after that. But that's, again, those are things that we've talked about, and they're in here, but if there's a way of coming up with funding. Anything else y'all want to, as far as getting ready for budget time, that would be beneficial?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I
Okay.
may.
Yes.
As you talked about transportation, we've been looking at doing buses. It don't have to be a big bus. It could be a small bus to transport you from Hope Mills to the hospital or to the mall or to VA. You won't believe how many people in Hope Mills has no transportation. I get to see that on a pretty regular basis, but it would come in handy if we just had some stops, like up the theater or down at Walmart or somewhere like that, where they could transfer across town.
I think for our budget retreat, Mr. Hume, if we invite him, I think we've received some information, and that would be part of it, that there would be, we wouldn't actually have to buy a bus. It would be, we would go through the FAST system. There's money available through that system. So we just have to get the more information, and again, they're kind of like we are with how you can spend the money that's coming to the county and to other areas. There's a
Can
lot of
you see
money.
that-
There's a lot of money out there, but there's also strings attached to it.
Madam Mayor, can you see that gets on that retreat budget?
Yes, I've asked. I put it on my list because we've already gotten some contact information, and he's already sent us a sort of a wishful kind of plan that we might could do. But it's very, very cost effective. It's not anything like all those we've seen before.
Okay, path of least resistance.
Okay, any other things that's reference to the capital improvement and the budget? And again, I think the main thing for you guys about the budget, for looking at the budget, is think in terms of we haven't completely spent this year's budget. That's where I think that you're planning for next year's money.
Right.
So you're not, this year's money is tied to key items and key things, and that's why when you say you want to spend money, they're looking at where's the money gonna come from. You know, if it's not in the budget, then we have to take it from somewhere, and that's why I think a lot of times we've been faced with that at previous boards, is arbitrarily asking, we're gonna spend this money, not realizing that it's gotta come from somewhere. So this, looking at the budget for coming up budget, that's where Drew will give you an update on. A lot of times, the update includes the fact that we got more money than we budgeted for because we were conservative in what we budgeted. And I think then other times, when we come up to a point that we have to raise taxes, like you mentioned, then that's something we have to face when we get there. And that's when sometimes our wants have to be cut because of the needs that we have.
Madam Mayor.
Yes,
I do have one more, one more thing for consideration, and this could be a big topic, but I was wondering, is there any way that we can maybe have some kind of talk, and maybe, Brian, you can talk to the HPC committee about it, maybe like changing the museum to the church, the chapel, and maybe repurposing that museum for something else. Because right now, like, it keeps coming up, we keep talking about it, but I don't think we have a clear understanding of what we want to do with that building. So I don't think we can budget for what we're going to spend in it, because I don't really think we have it purposed for how we're going to use the building.
Really a budget item or just a?
Well, it would, well, probably discussion, but it would turn into
Discussion
a
item.
difference in a budget item.
Here's a question on that. And you hear me say this all the time. I believe in going to the subject matter experts, which is the staff out there. And the staff hey, what do based on your input, your recommendation, I mean, if Dr. McCray don't mind me saying that, is get back with them and say, hey, listen, this is what we recommend. Scrap this, put it over there, and use this funds for over here. I mean, seriously, we are here to support you. We are here to help make your job easier by providing you what you need to get the job done. But let us know, based on what Dr. McCray said. I mean, if it's like on a road going to nowhere, that's exactly where it's going, nowhere. So something we can relook at.
Madam Mayor,
yes.
I know I've mentioned this to Scott before, but just in passing more or less, we need to increase our parking area behind Parks and Rec. If you look out there now, we've probably got 14 or 15 town trucks, and they're over there trying to play basketball.
There were cognizant of that, but you do know when this is done, there will be some distribution, and right now we're just very limited part of the construction.
All right, I guess.
And you come in at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night when all those vehicles are not being used. So you don't go to the police department at 10 o'clock at night when they're all behind the fence and see all the vehicles that are stored back there. But if you were parking back there, you'd be like, wow, we have a lot of vehicles.
But a lot of those police cars are in driveways in neighborhoods, and I support that as much as we can, because people drive through a neighborhood and see a police car there. Half the time, they don't know who it belongs to, because our cars look like Fayetteville's cars a lot. So I believe the visibility of a police officer in the area is a crime deterrent. And that's what they're doing. They're not out there to write tickets, my goodness. Although I've seen a bunch pulled over the last few weeks. Good job,
I know.
Chief. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But
I've been trying to brainstorm on that. It's
on the
concern.
Actually, it's part of the master plan for the municipal park.
parking,
Upgrade.
parking, since we opened up this can of worms, I might as well go and eat some. But, but is it any way possible we come up with just a temporary solution to the parking? I mean, why not park the town vehicles up there by where Public Works is at, and that way it frees up the space. Cause I came in here last week, and there was a game going on, and there was no space up there in front of the rec center, none. I mean, and I know.
It's hard because we shuffle, because when they do things over there, they're like, why would, you know?
I fully understand that, but put it this way, when I worked at Walmart, I was the manager, none of us can park within a certain area within some of the building. We had to leave that open to the customers. And when those parents and kids come to play ball, they the customers. They need to be to come in, pull in, and park.
You know, when this is done, there is some option for.
It's not done yet.
Temporary parking where they park the construction workers.
Right, we're talking about now, temporary for now. A temporary solution for now. We're not talking about something permanent, but a temporary solution to make it easier for the people to come in and get in and out of the building without having to park at 9:40.
And the game's at 9:30.
Yes.
And then, you know, when we had softball and sports, I had all of our staff park on the grass, remove the vehicles out, so we did have more parking and.
Yeah, I've seen that, you know, but like I said, I came in last week, the game going on, and there was no place to park. I had to drive way down here to park to walk back up there. And there was a few down here.
Definitely a concern to us. It is on page 32, we have a master plan to get additional parking, but like you said, it's a concern because those are our vehicles and perception is how come all the vehicles are right in front.
I'm not concerned, like I said, but for just mainly making availability of parking. That's all I'm concerned about, so that when the people come to play the game or to come to visit, they have a place to park without having to park way over there to walk down here. I'm sure we can find some way to accommodate that. That shouldn't be that difficult. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And we've been working on that.
Yeah, we haven't discussed our safety personnel and the equipment they've got, including cars, trucks. So when we get into that's when we start adding dollars up.
Yeah.
Because I don't want a police car out here with high mileage on it and a guy in a high-speed pursuit,
Actually, it's in here.
and we have to scrape him up off of a tree somewhere.
There's your rotation.
Good.
Yeah, it's in here.
Good,
We'll-
good,
We'll
good.
bring it back. Some of our stuff that we're gonna present is like the knuckle boom and things that weren't funded previously, that are still a high priority.
Okay.
Mr. Marley?
Brian?
He's been off quiet tonight, hasn't he?
So,
Your phone.
Huh?
Your phone.
My phone.
I don't have anything else, Madam Mayor.
We talked all night, haven't we?
Yeah, we good. I'm good.
Otherwise, the rest when we get home.
Yeah,
We talked out.
I'm feeling a little better, you know.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we're gonna take just a brief recess, because, we'll call our meeting back to order. And at this time, we would ask that the department heads and anyone else, y'all may leave unless you just want to hang out. We're not talking anymore about budget or about spending your money, our money, or anybody's money. So if I were you and you want to leave, you know, go right ahead. And it won't hurt our feelings at all.
All the cool kids are up here.
I'm just head of my household.
Mr. Marley's going with me then.
We just wanted the staff available to us.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here. But we'll give you the night off now.
Feel like they got run off.
Yeah. All right, I think the next thing, and this is it's good that our Mr. Hartzog's here too, because I think that when we went through our training with the League of Municipalities and the ethics training, and then we've had a lot of readers that have been doing a lot of reading, so clarifying the commissioner's role, I think that's what we want to kind of discuss, so they understand what the can-dos, and the can't-dos. Even though in some cases you think we're all powerful, but in many cases our job description is more we can hire 2 people, and then everything else with personnel is pretty much left up to our town manager. Is there anything as far as the hiring? At one time, and I will tell you this, at one time the board hired the town clerk, and that position was a town hire. And what I think they found over time, it changed back in 2011, I think, 2010, 2011, is when the town quit hiring the town clerk, and I mean the board quit hiring the town clerk, and it became the town manager, because they worked directly with the town manager, and then it took the politics out of it. I think that was the main thing, was then you had the town clerk having to do the bidding of the board, and and the thing was, that was a position that you wanted to be a consistent position. So that's what happened with that. And then we've always hired the town manager and the town attorney. And with the town manager, we just went through the process, the hiring process. So for the new board members, we did his evaluation. His next evaluation would be due in
6 months. 4 more months.
There's 6 should be semi-annual, right?
when's the date? I think,
So if you want to do it every 6 months, that would be June.
okay. But the idea would be that you will be doing an evaluation within this year, and then he did send you the goals and things that he's established for now. They had to be measurable, but when this June evaluation comes, then that'll be more or less you to evaluate, has he accomplished what he has set out to do? Where is he in the timeline? And then it's an opportunity, and there is a special form we use, and each of you does your own, and then we compile them, and then that's all done in a closed session along with the attorney and the clerk that goes through and records the minutes. But that's the big role we have as far as personnel goes. Now, I guess the question now would be if you have any questions, because I know there has been some, and I know the 2 new commissioners, so I felt like now that we're all together, whereas normally when we're at the league meeting, when we do the training there, usually we're all together. They do scenarios, they give you opportunities to interact, so that more or less you learn more about what your role is. So that's why I felt like we would do something so that everybody would hear the same thing. Of course, those that have been here, everybody that's been here, that's what we would say is the experienced ones, they can chime in if you need to know anything. So, who would like to go first?
I don't have any question because I've been reading Article 7, 160 statute, and it's self-explanatory. There is no room for misinterpretation whatsoever. I mean, it is what it is. The only but I would tell you, as you read and understand the policy, you understand that there is a certain level of responsibilities we all have. And as long as we stay within the confinements of those, and as long as we sure that integrity, accountability, and responsibility and fairness is in place, there will be no issues or problem whatsoever. It's just that simple, And I can tell you the way I do business, every time somebody calls me, they say, stop right there. Call the town manager. Now, if you want to, you can send an email to the town manager and CC all of the elected officials. But I will not carry your message up to I will not do that. I refuse to do it because I want the system to work the way it's made to work. Town manager, reach out to his department heads, all elected officials on the same sheet of music, so that we don't have to be reaching out to each other to find out what's going on or how that came about. I'm following Article 7, 168 of statute.
And Madam Mayor, I've been following it for 2 years, so I know what my roles and duties are. And I've never had a problem.
Good. So anyone else have
Remarks
questions?
complete.
Huh?
Remarks complete.
Okay. But
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I think that this board is working real well together. Of course, we're not bonded yet tight I'd like to see us get tighter.
What you mean, man? We like a rubber band.
See,
on?
you're already questioning me. But I think all of us have quite a bit of respect for our staff and our department heads and our public safety people and our public works people. I know I do, because I know what they did. I did that one time. Yeah, I was in that kind of work, so I knew what it was all about. I like to bring things to the town manager when I get them. Down the ladder, start
Chain
at the
of
top of the ladder and come down. So I just appreciate everything our town staff does to keep us informed. And most of the time, if I'm not informed, it's my fault.
Okay.
I put a wrong email address out and get it some other way. But thank you very much for letting me have time to say that.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Commissioner Marley? You good? Everybody's good? Well,
I will just chime in to
Okay.
say that to the extent that anyone does ever have any questions about proper roles of the board or, you know, how it should function or anything like that, please feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to talk through those issues.
okay. As far as my role, I facilitate the meeting. I make sure that we follow the Robert's Rules of Order, which again have been kind of fixed for our town procedural rules. The other thing is typically, unless it's something that, if it's something that affects the whole board or something that the board's lies in board responsibility, you'll find that I tend to be the one that people call. The newspaper will call, TV will call, the radio calls, because what they want is somebody that speaks for the town. And oftentimes it might be the town manager, but the reason for that is so that you don't have each of you giving your voice, and then you have to react to whatever their questions are. I try to stay up to date on what's going on, and also get information. You know, a lot of times the types of questions that are asked, I can get that information from things I have, and usually don't answer anything unless I know that it can be accurate. I won't give my opinion. I try to give what we can follow up with facts. The other role I have, of course, is I do appoint liaisons, which would be the positions that you put on as far as with our committees. I do appoint some outside of Hope Mills liaisons. I have no control over the actual committee formation. I don't have any input other than if we do a swearing in or something like that. A lot of times I'll participate in that, but the actual membership of committees is all made up, and our nominating committee is the one that oversees that. So that's, again, that's a procedural process, but it's also a process to make sure that we do the right things. And if we ever get to the point that we have too many people applying for committees, then what happens is those decisions are tough, because then you have to weigh. That's why we always date and time when applications come in, because if you got too many, then you can narrow it down the focus if they meet the requirements to, you know, when it's supposed to be. And the other thing I think that's important is that I can aid in the preparation of the agenda. Not that I put stuff on the agenda, but I can look at the agenda and I can get input from you. And then the other part of that would be a lot of the outside things that I do in the name of the town. Like right now, Mayor Pro Tem and I are working on some things with partnerships. We can work on those things, but before we actually do those things, it has to come back to the board for approval. So that, like when we did the current project with the work study program with Southview High School, where they're actually going to provide a program for people up there in the trades. We've worked on that, but we brought it to the board to let you know what we were doing when we're at that stage, that it could happen. So that way you're not only aware of it, but you approve it. And then I attend meetings representing the town. And a lot of times those meetings are policy-making meetings. A lot of times those are meetings that county-wide type of information, like the Mayor's Coalition this Friday. a lot of things come out of that because all the mayors, and again, representing their particular municipality together, if we have an issue like sales tax revenue, those kinds of things that affects all of us, then to collectively we can take a stand, because I am again the spokesperson for the town. But that's kind of how those I do not, and even with the budget, I do not have a vote. I can agree and give an opinion, but when it comes right down to it, you have the heavy load. Y'all have to do the hard stuff, and I get to be the ambassador, so to speak. Now, the other thing that I know that there might be questions about the strategic plan, the process we're going through. If you've looked at that information, it is a task, but I think that what will happen is when we finish this task, it'll be compiled. So it's not something that you have to feel like it's a test for you. It's you can pull things together, and just like when it came to writing a vision, I like the one we have. so it's a matter of this is something that it's current. I think we've developed that since I've been mayor. I don't think it's not old, but the task at hand is you may come up with a different idea that you like better. So if we put that together, then we have that conversation about, and of course the staff gets involved too. Any questions about that? Because I know that was something that we do have our appointments with Rick Ronchetti coming up. Each of us has a date and time, I believe, and it's going to be done by Zoom. So, any questions about that?
Heard from Jerry or Brian yet?
But here's the question, I guess. How do y'all like the vision plan, the mission plan that y'all have in place right now? That's the question.
Honestly,
Yes.
I have to go out and take a picture of it to tell somebody what it is, because it's not in anything that you can find in the
But
building.
it
Yeah.
should,
It's hanging in a picture frame out here in the lobby.
So we probably need to start putting it
on the agenda.
in the documents or something.
Yes.
Well, I think that's gonna be one of the results that we get from
Yeah.
the strategic plan.
Right.
Is we have a vision,
Right?
what we wanna do with it, how do we wanna
I know.
incorporate it into other things.
Right.
No, I got that. What I'm saying though
Part of the
is
thing.
if we incorporate on some of the documents that we have on a regular basis, I mean, almost every job I've had, trust me, the mission statement was there on the well page. The mission statement is there. And that's all we got to do. I mean, we don't expect no one to remember that thing, but I'm not going to remember it. Haven't been required to remember a mission statement for almost 15 years now. And I'm not going to start.
Cumberland County Schools, we used to have to memorize it.
That up in your sessions with
Yeah.
All right, but we
Okay.
just put on something
Yeah,
though.
go
That's
ahead.
all.
But I do agree that it needs to be a living document. So it needs
Right.
to be something that you live and believe in, and everything that you do is called mapping. Everything is supposed to map back to some aspect of it. So we worked on a really good one for the Gateway Plan, the Hope Mills Gateway Plan,
Yeah.
and we really made sure that the words were like creative, they were bright, they were things that you could think of. So I think we need to do that. It may need to be, and I like that it was a lot of mental exercises that we had to do to complete it. But I think it needs to be done because I think it needs to be something that you eat, live, breathe, and think about. Not that you have to memorize it, but everything that you do should be mapped back to that
Yeah.
vision plan. And it probably does need to be like updated or maybe worded just a little
Uh-huh.
bit.
Let's look at it then. Let's relook
Yeah.
at it. Let's
Yeah.
revisit it.
That's what this strategic plan will walk you through.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought it was a good. I think it's. I
Right.
think
It's a good, I think it's a good activity for us, and I think it'll kind of bring us, or give us an opportunity again to get focused on a focus for all of us, so that we're united in our efforts. I think that's a good thing too. And then we'll, as far as anything else, if I know that we did this previously, but if you come up with something that you have questions about before the budget retreat, if you'll send those to Scott and Drew, they may not answer it then, but they can answer it for the budget retreat if it has something tied to the budget. We did that last year so that if there were something that you probably could wait for an answer on, he could do the research on it, then that would be very beneficial, so that he could prepare it for you if there was something that we needed. I think the main thing is, which is a good thing for us this year, and I know hopefully, Drew, you'll appreciate it, is that we really, I think, want to just move forward. You know, there's no real burning desire. We want to get things accomplished and get it done. So I don't think you have to worry about us taking them off on a tangent, doing something completely different, or canceling something. You know, if it's in the works, we want to keep it going. So I think that's a good thing. And no details, we don't have a plan that we want to go tear apart and say we'd do it another way. And I think that's the other good thing, is that, we can be focused on getting the job done.
We just want to see progress.
Yep, want to see progress. Anything else that you can think of?
Madam Mayor, I
Yeah.
do have one question. I think you gave us an update on this. I cannot remember. Common County Schools is doing something about that. They were working on something to do something about that flooding at Seaway and Collier, right? But didn't something come out to follow up with that? I can't remember. I thought something came out that, because I know that's
So
been a
the-
topic of
The whole
discussion.
corridor down there is, I can't talk about development projects that we're working on that are proprietary, but that whole Camden, that whole region is in the works for some projects.
And it's going to change the road
That's where,
formation.
like Cumberland County Schools, and even with that piece of street over there, that's all in the county.
Right.
And it's private. So even if the town wanted to throw, it's probably $5 million project to fix Stever. Even if we wanted to do that, it's private property, we can't, but we don't have easements, we don't have right of way. It's not in our jurisdiction. I know residents go there on it.
I know, but I did my research, and trust me, I really looked at an article. Who owns the road? Who's responsible? And I trust me, I got an education when I did research. But I'm sorry, would you finish talking?
Yep, that was
But if
it.
you get questioned with stuff like that.
But
Yeah.
here's a good one though. What can we do to try to keep our meetings within a range? 45 minutes no more than an hour to get in and out of here. And the reason why I say that, I go to the county meetings on a regular basis. I'm telling you, when I walk in there, it's like, hey, what's going on? Like, done and done. They get straight to business. Sound like for us to do the same thing on certain things. I mean, if there's anything that you recommend that we can do, submit questions and things to you in advance. And I've done that a couple of times, and actually it's proven to be effective because I didn't have those questions when I got here at the meeting. So anything that you all recommend that will help us expedite the time in the meeting, because just like anything else, you all want to get home because you've been here all day long, and I've been with you. I value my time. I gotta get
We obviously try to put things that we don't anticipate being hot buttons and things on the consent
Right.
agenda. So your consent agenda might be heavy,
Mhm.
and you can pull those off if you want to discuss them, and we can kind of target that. But I think
But
overall, it's just the mayor does a great job of managing the meeting, and it really depends on who's here and how we get into those and
Right.
how we manage that.
Well, and I think with our consent agenda, if it's money that's already budgeted, that all we're doing is just, once it's said in that consent agenda, this was budgeted, I don't think we need to discuss it unless there's some, and I think
Right.
if there's a budget amendment sometimes, but if there's an explanation, again, that could be, I think those kinds of things, I think we're all in agreement that we have to trust town staff. And then, of course, the regular agenda items that are there, those are the ones we can focus on, the new business or whatever brought up for old business. So,
I'm sorry, Mayor.
go ahead.
But I have one caveat to that, and that is, if for any reason you put something on the caveat, but on the consent agenda, and it seems like there could be a possible question about it, would be a good idea to probably send it to us so that we can look at it and ask those questions instead of the meeting. I would appreciate that very much. That way, then once we know some of that, we know that we're ready to vote on and approve it or say yeah or
I
nay.
encourage you to each, call me, call Jane, call Chancellor, if it's development.
Oh, trust me, I do.
Time with you is well spent
Mhm.
with each of you. It's still new, and it's invaluable to kind of hear what your questions are, and, everybody's busy, but we're not too busy that we can't sit down and go through things and get you up to speed.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
am I correct if I say the county commissioners have a budget workshop before, or day before their meetings or something, to help them get a lot of
Yeah.
stuff out of the way?
they have a pre, meeting, and then sometimes they do, they split the county commissioners, I think, so that, by committees. They have committees within their, membership. So like, there's a finance committee, and so that committee, gets a lot of the information that's gonna be on the agenda, and is kind of tasked with asking all the questions. But I do think that the plan that they use, it does mean that there's a lot of information you get prior to actually, coming before the public in the meeting. So that's something that we could look at and see. I think the other part of that is how much time is it gonna take, and,
Right.
and for our working members getting, so that they can fit it in their schedule, that's the other thing.
A lot of places do a meeting in the whole before they go into public session,
Uh-huh.
but then you gotta be careful about.
Yes,
making
oh,
decisions.
yeah.
Right,
But,
The meetings will certainly come into play.
oh, yeah.
yeah.
And I'll echo what Scott said from the legal side of things, that if there are any issues that y'all think might come up with an agenda item that you've got a question about, if you wanna give me a call ahead of time, just talk that through.
Okay.
That can streamline some things. Obviously, questions come up during the meetings, and that's fine, but.
All right. And I do have one other question, Scott. In the event you're the town manager, and in the event that you are unavailable, who's the next person I call?
So like usually if I'm gone, like if I'm on vacation or training, or I'm not in the building or in town,
Mhm.
I'll designate who's acting. You know,
Wow.
like when I was recently left the state, I nominated Drew. I nominated the fire chief, because
Right.
he's our senior staff.
I have a question to that. Shouldn't that be like somewhat of a standard chain of command for operational flow?
We have that.
Case in point, you are the town manager, Jane is the town clerk. Shouldn't she be your best choice for, in your absence? I think as a military personnel, seriously, but she's the town clerk, and
I think she's got a lot on her plate to
all right,
actually work
I'm just
on.
saying,
Yeah.
I'm just asking, this is a question I'm just asking, and then you got your finance manager, now, let's say you going for an extended period of time, now, finance manager, filling in for a town manager, could somewhat be a conflict of interest to a certain degree. Seriously, think about it. When you talk, normally your finance manager is a separate entity in itself in a lot of organizations. And because of the fact that they hold a financial piece, they control the budget to a certain degree on some things.
I would point out to you that, so Drew finished the North Carolina Managers course in 2003.
I understand that.
So he's, equally as qualified as me and has as much experience. We've been doing this 20 years.
What about what's Chancellor's position?
Community Development Director.
Community development. He knows about all the moving pieces.
I
Almost.
have a very qualified team. I
Yes, you do. Now,
Chuck's been here 34 years.
I mean, what I'm saying is, and in the military, we already know, incapacitation, you can't appoint nobody. I guess that's what I'm getting at. You cannot appoint someone, become incapacitated. Who's in charge?
Just so you're aware, we have the call-out trees. So like in emergencies, events, the sheriff's dispatch, our people, they all have if this building is on fire, they go through the.
I got that piece. But what I'm saying is, you become incapacitated, who's in charge?
Technically, that would probably be the second in command. I mean, generally, the police chief or the fire.
But you see what I'm getting at? You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, unplanned, I mean, obviously, the council, the mayor may convene and say, hey, here's who's gonna do it.
But we shouldn't have to go there. Which should already be a plan in place.
But I think that's a little bit out of our hands, though.
Not really.
Mayor, at one time, we had on the table an assistant town manager.
We did. I remember they talking about that.
That never came through because we were trying to find something that he could do besides be the assistant town manager?
Maybe he could
Drew-
be
Drew helps
project
me with
manager.
90% of the things on
Maybe he could be the
still, so
project
he's-
manager. Maybe he could be project
So,
manager.
yeah, you're talking about the project manager, operations manager, whichever want to call that individual.
It's not a conflict with finance for municipality.
Mhm.
Most towns have assistant town manager slash finance officer.
I've seen that. I've seen that in writing too, you know. Just asking, those are questions I'm just asking, you know, for clarification and a clear understanding, you know, just in case in the event of. But I'm good now.
No, but right now it's, Drew is active in that capacity.
Okay.
Okay. All righty. Well, I appreciate everyone being here tonight. Commissioner Marley has not had a whole lot to say. He's been our silent one down there, but we do appreciate everybody being here. And our next meeting is next Monday night, so we're looking forward to seeing you again soon. But if we do have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make-
George,
All righty. So, all righty. Thank you very much. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Commissioner